Those commercials always crack me up. I think it's because I'm becoming more aware of the things that I'm doing that these commercials are, making fun of. Like I find myself making weird noises when I go to sit down or even when I get up, or I don't have a live, laugh, love sign. Well, I don't anymore. But I do the things that my mom used to do that I swore up and down I would never do. Like when my kids leave a door in the house open, I ask them if they were raised in a barn. Or when I take a swig of a Coca-Cola drink, I make like a face like I'm having a stroke. I tell my kids all the time when they waste food that there are starving kids in third world countries that would have eaten what they just threw away. I mean, most of us can relate to those commercials because we often find ourselves doing things that our parents did or said, like talking about the weather all the time, or sighing when we sit down, or telling a good dad joke. Speaking of which, what do you call someone who loves dad jokes but doesn't have kids? A faux pas. Thanks, Landon Crouch, for that. The things our parents did and their parents did tend to get passed down to us. And for the most of it, it's innocent. It's innocent behavioral traits, right? But what about the things we don't want passed down? What about the things that we're not proud of? The things we hope no one finds out about us, or the things we kind of keep telling ourselves over and over again that we'll fix? For some of us, we grew up in a house in which we saw addictive behaviors. We experienced fear on a regular basis. We found ourselves, lacking essential resources. We witnessed abuse, both physically and verbally, among many other things. And the question we keep asking ourselves is, how do we end the cycle? How do we break this generational flow of destructive behavioral traits that have and are destroying whole families, relationships, and parenting? Well, we've been in a series called Unbecoming, taking a look at how we can move beyond some of those unhealthy behavioral traits passed down to us from our families. The Bible makes it very clear that the sins that are passed down have a ripple effect. Here's how the Bible puts it. The sins of the parents are laid upon their children and grandchildren. The entire family is affected, even children in the third and fourth generation. As we've talked about when we kicked off this series a few weeks ago, our families of origin mark us for good or ill. And when it's for ill, it wounds us and cripples us and leaves us with scars. The first week we talked about what those generational curses look like. Now, last week we talked about how we can forgive and move on. Today, I want to talk about how we can be a blessing to the next generation. Now, if the problem is the sins of the parents, as stated in the verse we just read, then the question we need to answer is, how do you and I parent? And not just parenting in general, which we could spend several weeks talking through, but how do we fathers father to counter the generational curse? How do mothers mother to counter the curse? If we're trying to overcome the sins of the parents, which is often called the generational curse of dysfunction, then we need to look at the opposite of being parents who curse. And the opposite of cursing our children, biblically, is blessing them. Do you know, according to a 2018 Annie E. Casey Foundation Kids Count report that tracks national and state level kids data, 33% of kids in America lived in homes that had only one parent, single parent. That's over 24 million kids who didn't either have a father or mother figure in the home. And statistics are showing that single parent homes are more likely to trend towards poverty level living. Now, the negative effect of a single parented child, especially ones without a father, can be seen in countless studies and reports. The statistics show the importance of a father figure in the majority of children's lives. A U.S. Department of Justice report indicated that children from fatherless homes accounted for 63% of youth suicides in our country, 90% of all homeless and runaway youth, 80% of children who exhibit behavior disorder, 71% of all high school dropouts, 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions, 75% of adolescent patients in substance abuse centers, and 75% of those who committed sexual crimes. Now, what those stats tell you and I is that the curse of generational dysfunction is real, and unless we change the trend, we're going to keep seeing and experiencing the effects of it. Now, I want to quickly acknowledge that not all single parent and fatherless child ends up being a statistic. I myself am from a single parent home, fatherless home, and because I had an amazing mother and some really important people who came alongside of my mom to help mold me and shape me, I was able to overcome all those statistics. However, looking back, I can easily see that without a great support system for my mom, I could have quite easily become one of those stats. So that's what we're going to look at: how to bless your children as parents, and specifically as a father. And how you bless your sons is different than how you bless your daughters. It's like that old saying, right? Girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice. Boys are made of snakes and snails and puppy dog tails, right? And BB guns and firecrackers and mud and mini bikes and football and wrestling, pillow fights, dinosaurs, go-karts, killer ants with magnifying glasses, and endless farting. And they love that word, fart, right? Because that's a boy. So let's start off with blessing your sons. And let me tell you about a story in the Bible. It involves someone we met a couple weeks ago in this series, a man by the name of Jacob. But this time, the focus is going to be on his older brother, Esau. You see, in biblical times, a father's blessing was very special and a formal event, particularly for the firstborn. The father would lay his hands over his son and speak a verbal message of encouragement and love and acceptance, as well as talk positively about their future and pledge to make sure that it happened, right? Well, the day for Esau's blessing as the eldest son came. He hunted for the right game and he cooked it to his father's liking, all to gain his father's approval and favor, only then to find that his father had been deceived into giving his blessing to his younger brother Jacob. His father's sight was poor, and Jacob tricked the old man into blessing him instead. Now, this is a big deal because in ancient times, once a blessing was given, it couldn't be given again. Now, let's jump right into the story right here. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and almost before Jacob had left his father, Esau returned from his hunt. Esau prepared a delicious meal and brought it to his father. Then he said, "Sit up, my father, and eat the wild game so you can give me your blessing." But Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" Esau replied, "It is your son, your firstborn son, Esau." Isaac began to tremble uncontrollably and said, "Then who just served me wild game? I have already eaten it, and I have blessed him just before you came. And yes, that blessing must stand." When Esau heard his father's word, he let out a loud and bitter cry. "Oh, my father, what about me? Bless me too," he begged. "What is left for me to give you, my son?" Esau pleaded. "But do you only have one blessing? Oh, my father, bless me too." Then Esau broke down and wept. Bless me too, Father. Can you hear or at least picture the pain Esau must have felt in that moment? Here he is pleading for the blessing that was rightfully his, and yet he wasn't going to be able to receive it because his father had already given it away. I mean, that plea is the plea of every boy's heart. Even though the times have changed and we don't have formal blessings like before, the idea of relational blessing is still an important concept. We should absolutely instill these blessings into our children's lives. Here is what that could look like. It starts with the blessing of love. Children need to hear words of love and acceptance from their parents. I recently came across an interview with former Denver Bronco wide receiver Demaryius Thomas, who was a Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver, won a Super Bowl title with none other than Peyton Manning, right? Check out his upbringing. His mother was arrested and in prison when he was 11. Father was in the military. Stepfather and grandmother were also locked up. So at 11, he was basically an orphan. So how did he overcome all of that to end up where he is today? Listen to what he says. "I've had multiple high school coaches who looked out for me, multiple college coaches, pastors, uncles, friends. I talked to a lot of the kids who have parents in prisons or who left them when they were young. They just want somebody to say, 'I care about you.' But that doesn't happen enough. So they get into trouble. As men, as athletes especially, we don't like to talk about love. We talk about brotherhood and all that, but not love. But it's the most important thing in a child's life. More important than the kind of school you go to or what neighborhood you live in, or even if you grow up around drugs and violence. If you are loved, you'll make it out. But I think it's even more than that. There's more we should be saying to our kids, and especially our sons. Just listen to what God the Father says to Jesus the Son over and over again. There's this moment when Jesus kind of reveals to his closest friends, his closest disciples, who he really is. And in that moment, God the Father says to Jesus the Son, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Now, if you pay close attention, you'll see that there are actually three blessings in that statement. One, Jesus belonged. This is my son. Two, Jesus was valued. I am well pleased with him. And three, Jesus was competent. God says, listen to him. God was like, this is my boy. I am beyond proud of everything he's accomplished. A boy needs to hear that from his parents, and especially his father. What this affirmation does is it affirms in our sons what God has created them to be in a world that's doing whatever it can to tell them something different. If our sons don't get that affirmation from us, they will most certainly go chasing after it, and oftentimes in destructive ways. But it isn't just our sons who need to be blessed by us. It's our daughters too. Daughters need to know that they are loved, valued, and protected. They need to hear that they are beautiful regardless of what the world says. They need to know that we mothers and fathers will fight for them, provide for them, and protect them. It's important that daughters receive this from both parents. But if I may suggest, it's twice as important that daughters hear this and see this from their fathers. Now, I'm sure it's not lost on you the increasing sexualization of young girls in our culture, especially from the media, from ads, video games, clothing, and cosmetics. There was and continues to be a conversation around a recent Netflix show that highlights exactly this. And the results of all of this is leading to damaging results. I can't tell you how many times I've watched a YouTube show only to see a commercial and ads that try to convince girls to obsess about their body image. And all this is doing is leading young girls to become more prone to eating disorders, low self-esteem, depression, and promiscuity. And social media isn't helping, let's be honest. I saw an article where the author, Kathleen Parker, in response to all of the sexualization and self-image issues, posed a simple yet powerful question. She asked, where are their fathers? You see, when a daughter hears from their father that they are beautiful, that they are lovely, that they are exactly who God created them to be, that fathers delight in their daughters, they are less inclined to go searching for it in all the wrong places. There's a special relationship between a father and a daughter, and one set in place by God as a part of the very structure of family that God created. From both parents, a daughter learns what to look for in a man and an expectation of how she should be treated. A daughter gains security in her self-esteem and sense of self-worth as a woman. A daughter is given moral guidance and a grounded, guarded virtue. A daughter receives appropriate affection in ways that fulfill her young and developing heart. I remember when our oldest daughter, who was in the first grade at the time, brought home an invitation to her school's father-daughter dance. And I was so excited to be able to take her to do this. And this was a great opportunity for me to spend some time with her and to have fun. And we literally went almost full prom mode. I mean, I went and bought a nice suit and bought her a nice dress. I bought her a beautiful corsage, and we drove the nice family car that night. And when we got to the dance, she immediately took off to go dance with her friends, but not before warning me that I wasn't allowed to dance like a fool, right? Now, from time to time, she would make a face at me from across the room if I did any dance move she didn't approve of, which was pretty much most of them. But at the end of the night, the last slow dance was saved for father and daughters. My daughter walked over to me and we just danced. And I just remember telling her how beautiful she was and how much I loved her and how I would always try to be there for her no matter what. There have been many other moments that my wife and I have had with our kids over the years in hopes of instilling that approval and acceptance and confidence and value in their lives. In fact, in one of the original languages that the Bible was written in, the meaning of the verb to bless literally means to bow the knee, as in giving honor, deference to someone. Let me ask you, do your daughters feel like you're bending the knee? Do they feel loved, valued, appreciated, accepted, and confident? Can I tell you a little secret? It's never too late to start. Because when you give this blessing, be it to your sons or your daughters, you get in return. If you weren't blessed as a child, start blessing your children and see what happens to your own wounds and scars and holes and empty places. Because you need it. Honestly, we all do. So start receiving blessings by giving it to your child. And as you bless them, watch it break whatever generational curse you might be under when you were not blessed. So let me pray for you. Jesus, thank you for the opportunity, God, to be loved by you. Thank you for being a father who is always there, always present, and was so willing to do whatever it took to keep us safe, to protect us from the evil of this world. And so, Father, if there's anyone watching this at this moment who don't know that love, who don't know that protection, who don't know that immeasurable grace that you offer us as our Heavenly Father, Lord, I pray that they would just take a moment and ask you to come into their lives. That they would just say a simple prayer, as simple as this: Jesus, I need you. I invite you to come into my life, and from this day forward, I will live for you. Jesus, if anyone has prayed that prayer today, Lord, I pray that you would just warm their hearts and help them to know that you are with them, you are for them, and you love them. And I pray that as we are leading and loving and serving our next generation, our kids, God, that we would bless them as you have blessed us, so that we can finally begin to break these generational curses. In Jesus' name, amen.